artery behind the lower pole. So when it is actually when you are looking at the approach of the recurrent laryngeal nerve, you cannot see that it is so close to the artery. So but at near the lower pole, this recurrent laryngeal nerve will deviate towards the artery like this. So gradually the recurrent laryngeal nerve approaches the artery. This is more so because the artery makes a loop like this, and because of this loop is actually going behind the thyroid gland, so you cannot see it. So this recurrent laryngeal nerve close to the lower pole gets very intimate with the artery, gets very close to the artery. So if you want to tie up the inferior thyroid artery, you have to tie it away from the lower pole. That is the classical teaching, that if you want to tie the superior thyroid artery, you have to tie it close to the upper pole. If you want to tie the inferior thyroid artery, you have to tie it away from the lower pole, because just behind this lower pole the artery and the nerve come almost in very close contact. However, this is not strictly true, that if you want to actually tie the inferior thyroid artery, it is best that you explode the inferior thyroid artery, you dissect and you separate the recurrent laryngeal nerve, you maintain the recurrent laryngeal nerve in clear vision, and when you trace up the inferior thyroid artery, instead of ligating the whole artery, you ligate only those small branches which are going inside the thyroid gland, because the long branch which is going behind the posterior border of the thyroid gland, this branch of the inferior thyroid is actually supplying the parathyroid glands. So if you tie up the trunk of the inferior thyroid artery at the lower pole, you are going to actually damage the blood supply of the parathyroid gland. So roughly, although we are saying you tie the superior thyroid artery close to the upper pole and you tie the inferior thyroid artery away from the lower pole, in case of the inferior thyroid artery, actually it is always better to dissect out the individual branches going into the thyroid gland and tie them up, rather than try to tie the artery as a whole. Anyway, the rest of this thing you have to see from the back side, you cannot see it from the front, because this loop of the inferior thyroid artery and the recurrent laryngeal nerve coming in close contact is visible from the posterior surface of these lateral lobes of the thyroid gland. Now again, we have said that this isthmus has got an upper border and it has got a lower border. On the upper border, you can already see the anastomosis between the two superior thyroid arteries. On the lower border, instead of the arterial anastomosis, you have actually the inferior thyroid veins, multiple inferior thyroid veins coming down and draining into the left brachiocephalic vein. So these branches are definitely there, or sometimes you might have an artery arising from the arch of the aorta called the arteria thyroidea ema. If you have an additional arteria thyroidea ema coming directly from the arch of the aorta, that would also come to the lower border of the isthmus. However, apart from these things, here you can make out that the upper border of the isthmus is rather plain and featureless. Occasionally you can have a pyramidal lobe, an additional part of the thyroid which may be fibrous or it may be glandular, containing all the thyroid follicles and everything, but it may even be a fibrous band. So this is a pyramidal lobe of the thyroid gland, an additional lobe of the thyroid, from which you can again have a fibrous band extending upward, going right up to the hyoid bone, and this is called levator glanduli thyroidi. So this fibrous band going up from the pyramidal lobe up to the hyoid is called the levator glanduli thyroidi. So all these things you can see from the frontal view of the thyroid once you have placed the thyroid gland on the thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage and the upper trachea. Now when you actually look at the neck, you cannot immediately see the thyroid gland. So it is not that directly in dissection you can approach the thyroid gland. Dissection of the thyroid also is not a very easy job. So how are you going to come to the level of the thyroid gland? From the skin of the neck. Now in the neck, in the midline of the neck in the front, you have the skin, you have the subcutaneous tissue. In the subcutaneous tissue you have the platysma muscle, and you have the transverse cervical cutaneous nerves coming from the cervical plexus. Now when you have removed the skin, subcutaneous tissue and the platysma, then you are going to get the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. Once you have cut through the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia, then you are going to get the strap muscles in front of the neck, that is the infrahyoid muscles, that is the omohyoid, the sternohyoid, and underneath it the sternothyroid and the thyroid, all these muscles you are going to get, and only when you have either retracted and separated these muscles or cut them apart, and over that again a part of it is even covered by sternomastoid. When you have retracted all this and you have cut through these strap muscles, only then you can come to the thyroid, but even then the thyroid is not immediately evident in all clarity, because the thyroid gland is again covered by the pretracheal layer of the deep cervical fossa. So the pretracheal layer of the deep cervical fossa invests the entire thyroid gland and it forms a sort of false capsule. So this investing layer of deep cervical fossa, it forms a false capsule around the thyroid gland, and the underneath that false capsule there is a true capsule which is formed by condensation of the fibrous tissue of the gland itself, condensation of the fibrous stroma of the gland. So the thyroid has got a true capsule formed by condensation of its fibrous tissue. It has a false capsule outside which is formed by the pretracheal layer of the deep cervical fossa, and within the true capsule there is a venous network within the thyroid gland. So deep to the true capsule you have a venous plexus within the thyroid gland. So therefore when you have removed the thyroid gland by incising the pretracheal fossa, you are also removing that venous network. Now to get all these things in perspective, we have to draw a transverse section of the neck. Now how are you going to do that? Suppose first you draw the thyroid gland itself. Now if you have drawn the thyroid gland itself, it would look somewhat like this. So this is the section of the thyroid gland, and over here is the isthmus, and on the two sides are the two lateral lobes. And now you can make out that this anterolateral surface that you are looking at is actually this surface. It is over here, and this part is the isthmus, which has flattened anteroposteriorly, and the thyroid then has the first surface here, the anterolateral surface, and it has a medial surface and it has a posterior surface. Now you can make out that the lateral lobes of the thyroid gland actually have three surfaces, and somewhere here you are looking at the anterior border, and somewhere here you are looking at the posterior border. This border is rather blunted, so it does not qualify as a border, but you have an anterior border somewhere here which is this structure, and you have a posterior border somewhere here which you cannot see. So the lateral lobes of the thyroid gland, they have an anterior border, they have a posterior border, they have an anterolateral surface, they have a medial surface, and they have a posterior surface. Now we are going to draw the remaining structures in relation to these surfaces. What are we going to draw? First we are going to draw the trachea. So now we have already said that the thyroid gland is encased in the pretracheal layer of the deep cervical fossa. Let's draw that. Suppose this is the pretracheal layer of the deep cervical fossa, enclosing the thyroid gland in a capsule like this. So you have a false capsule of the pretracheal layer of the deep cervical fossa. Here, let's make it nice and rounded over here. So pretracheal layer of deep cervical fossa. Behind it, we are going to draw the trachea. So you have the D-shaped tracheal rings, the tracheal cartilage, and the trachea, the flat part, the fibromuscular part of the trachea containing the trachealis muscle. Behind the trachea you have the esophagus, which is flattened anteroposteriorly, and you have a corrugated lumen of the esophagus. And although we have drawn the trachea here, slightly above the trachea you have the cricoid, and this capsule of the thyroid is attached to the cricoid cartilage by a structure, fibrous structure called the ligament of Berry. And in the tracheoesophageal groove, somewhere here you have the recurrent laryngeal nerve, one over here, one over here. So these two are the recurrent laryngeal nerves, and because this is the posterior border of the thyroid, the parathyroid glands are most likely to be embedded over here. So with the thyroid gland at the posterior border, you have the very small, the size of a small split pea. Traditionally, you have the parathyroid glands like this. They may be embedded within the capsule, outside the capsule, or even inside the substance of the thyroid gland itself. So these parathyroid glands may be embedded in the substance of the thyroid gland. They may be stuck to the posterior border of the lobes of the thyroid gland, and they may even be outside this capsule, this false capsule or the pretracheal fascial layer of the thyroid gland. Now these parathyroid glands are frequently very mischievous, and their position is not so very certain. So we have drawn the thyroid gland, isthmus, lateral lobes. We have drawn the trachea, ligament of Berry, which is attached higher up to the cricoid, esophagus, the two recurrent laryngeal nerves. Now behind this esophagus you expect the vertebra, the thoracic vertebra. If you draw the thoracic vertebra, the body, the transverse process, and you draw the lamina, and you draw the spine, and somewhere here is the vertebral canal. So in front of the vertebra you have the prevertebral muscles over here, and you have the erector spiny group of muscles over here, and just as you have the pretracheal fascia, you also have a prevertebral fascia. So you have a prevertebral fascial layer over here, and in front of the thyroid gland over here we have said that you cannot directly go to the thyroid gland, so you have the sternohyoid muscle, sternohyoid, this is the omohyoid, and this is the sternothyroid. So again you have the sternohyoid, the omohyoid, and the sternothyroid. So these are the prevertebral muscles. So you have drawn the sternohyoid, omohyoid, and the sternothyroid muscles, and these are also loosely enclosed by an extension of the pretracheal fascia, loosely enclosed. Now in front of all this you still have the skin. You have the skin. In the subcutaneous tissue you have the platysma muscle and the superficial fascia, and not only that, in the superficial fascia you also have the anterior jugular veins, and apart from that you have an investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. So this is the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia, posteriorly blending with the prevertebral layer of the deep cervical fascia. So skin, in the subcutaneous tissue you have the platysma muscle, the anterior jugular veins, investing layer of the deep cervical fascia, followed by the infrahyoid muscles, the sternohyoid, omohyoid, sternothyroid over here, and its continuation as the thyrohyoid muscle. Then you have the pretracheal layer of the deep cervical fascia enclosing the thyroid gland. Not only that, in this gap over here between the posterior surface of the thyroid and the prevertebral fascia, you have what is called the carotid sheath. So this is the position of the carotid sheath over here. This is the position of the carotid sheath over here. So within the carotid sheath you have the internal carotid artery, you have the internal carotid artery, you have the internal jugular vein, and you have the vagus nerve. So, and behind all this you have the sympathetic trunk. So the carotid sheath is partly theoretically formed by an extension of the pretracheal fascia and partly by an extension of the prevertebral fascia. So carotid sheath, by traditional theory, it is supposed to be formed by an extension of both the pretracheal fascia and an extension of the prevertebral fascia. Not only that, we have drawn the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. Now this investing layer of the deep cervical fascia splits to enclose two muscles, the sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius. So we have not drawn those muscles, let us draw them. The sternocleidomastoid over here and the trapezius somewhere here behind. So we shall draw the trapezius here, and on this side also we shall draw the sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius. So somewhere here we will draw the sternocleidomastoid, and somewhere behind here we shall draw the trapezius. and we shall show that the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia splits to enclose both the sternocleidomastoid and it splits to enclose the trapezius. So now you have done the thing more or less comprehensively. You have put the thyroid gland in its proper position, both in its cross